Welcome to another episode of The Local Dive. This is Alex Scott, joined by Dean and Sarah. Swishing, that's his green tea, being
I forgot a LaCroix.
being shaken, not stirred. We're also joined by Dean's wife, Chrissy. How's it going, Chrissy?
It's good. I have an extra LaCroix in the car if you want it.
Now you tell me.
Okay. So don't encourage it.
Yeah, and then Ashlyn Portero, as always. We are excited to continue our series that we started last week talking about relationships, and we will be this week focusing on marriage. And so cue Frank Sinatra's Love and Marriage, but don't really because we can't afford it.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, you know the song. It's like love and marriage goes together like a horse and carriage.
We're all just staring at each other. Alex is like
nothing.
Alex is like by far the most refined one in this group, so this doesn't surprise me.
I'm like, how do you guys not know that song?
Anyways, give me a Boys to Men song and I'm good from back in the day.
Right. I'm like, Taylor Swift has a great archive, okay?
Well, it's called Love and Marriage. I mean, I just thought it fit the theme. Anyways, moving on. I'm going to delete the part of me singing, too. Nobody needs to be
staying.
Nobody. Well, okay, then I'm sorry for everybody who just had to sit through that.
Hey, you're a trumpet player. You're musical.
Doesn't mean I can carry a tune with my voice, but hey, whatever. Anywho, as we move into the shallow end, we will first keep things nice and light. What is your favorite movie or TV show marriage
Like
or
married
relationship?
Couple.
Sure.
Married couple.
Yeah, married couple on TV.
Chris, what you got?
Don't ask me first. I hate these. I hate to state my favorite of anything because it stresses me out. So you guys go first, and I might copy one of yours.
Good company with Ashlyn.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is like anybody who is like a Gen Z is like probably not going to get this. Maybe even a millennial. But my parents always watched All in the Family when we were growing up, and Archie and Carol Bunker were like so. Do you guys know? Have you seen All in the Family? It's
You're coming out swinging from 1989.
Boomer generation, hear me. I thought they were so funny. I mean, I always felt really. Isn't her? I think her name's Carol. Yeah, Archie and Carol. I think. No, Edith. Or was it Carol? Bunker? I think it was Edith. Where did I get Carol?
I don't know. I thought it was Carol. That sounded right, so I don't know.
Okay, well, clearly I'm not that attached because we need to do some fact checking. Alex is going to fact check this for me. But the Bunkers on All in the Family.
Archie and Edith. Okay, well, apologies to whoever Carol Bunker is. It's stuck in my head. I just thought they were like funny because it was always like, I mean, Archie was just this like crotchety, grumpy old man. And then, Edith. Where am I getting Carol from? Edith is just like doing her thing. She's just like sweet and like, serves Archie and but then like at the end of the show they have this like very like just touching moment, and they're just a good like kind of old couple. So I would say them. And then because it's fresh on my mind, I just finished watching Downton Abbey. I had never watched it before, and so that was my latest TV binge. And I would say, I mean, all of the like couples on there are great in their own ways because they're all very different, but Robert and Cora, who is are like the kind of matriarch and patriarch of the family, they are just really funny. Like Robert can sometimes be a little bit of like a man baby, and then Cora is just kind of like in a perpetual state of eye roll. So if you've watched the show, but they're like fun. She's an American and he's British, and they're managing this like grand estate in North England. So those are my two.
I'm a little surprised you haven't watched that before.
I know. It's very on brand for me.
Yeah, definitely. So I am unapologetically a 90s guy. People say they're a kid of the 90s when they're like 30. It's like, hey, we don't mean born in the 90s. I mean like your like formative years were in the 90s, right? So mine are easy. One is definitely Zach and Kelly, who wound up getting married at a later special episode after the show was done.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, Zach Morris and Kelly Kapowski, they got married. So that has to
counts.
That has to be number one. I mean, I still have a hard time watching the episode when Kelly chose Jeff for a little while over Zach. It just was terrible. I hated that guy my entire life. And any true Saved Bell fan hates Jeff.
So what do you?
And he cheated on her too.
What do you do when you're watching? Like you're like, I can't look.
I gotta fast forward. Can't do it. And
I
then
understand this. I'm like this with Gilmore Girls. When Rory refuses Logan, I have to be in the right headspace to watch that.
Oh, when they're outside dancing at the costume dance, and Jesse and Slater are singing a song inside, and Zach says, "Will we still be friends?" And she says, "Can we still be friends?" He says, "Forever." It's just too much. Can't do it. So the couple that should have been so I'm making my own category.
Okay.
Dawson and Joey. I'm very anti Pacey and Joey. Or sorry. Yes, I'm very anti them.
Tell our listeners about how far you have taken this protest. I think that you've shared.
Oh yeah, well we had a Dawson's Creek party every Wednesday night at Jackson Hardy's house growing up, and we would every Wednesday night. And if it was canceled because somebody was sick or couldn't do it, I would make an announcement on the intercom at Leon that it was canceled. And we had a section of anti-Pacey, pro-Joey fans and pro-Dawson fans. We sat in a corner and made T-shirts called Joey's Corner. We were like militant about it. So that's a couple that should have been, and we all missed out because of it. But the greatest couple of all time is Zach Morris and Kelly Kapowski.
Wow.
In all of shows.
A high school couple is the greatest
They
couple
got
of
married.
all time.
Chrissy, what you got?
I, as a child of the 90s as well, and I was born in the 80s, but, 90s and actually early 2000s. The Bings, Mr. and Mrs. Bing,
Yes.
Chandler and Monica.
Yes,
That's
yes.
That, that they were special. I don't know. I feel like I watched more of the episodes before they were married. But that was part of the fun. And then when they got married, it was like, oh, okay, well, they're married. And
That
that's
was like
great
a
too.
good storyline as it
Yeah,
developed.
they
I feel
balanced
like.
each other well,
Yeah.
and it was just enjoyable to kind of watch their banter and their I don't know.
Where did they first hook up? Trivia question.
In Vegas,
What city?
London.
London.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
Yes,
There you go.
I run of Ross is like 27 weddings.
that's right.
Dean, I was going to create a category sort of to your point of what should have been, what they never actually got to the wedding. And as somebody who grew up watching Seinfeld, George Costanza and Susan Ross, and in the episode, Susan ends up dying because she licks too many toxic wedding invitation envelopes, and so she doesn't make it to the wedding. So it was the couple.
Don't lick your envelope.
That's
Yeah.
the most Seinfeld moment or storyline ever.
Yes. So the couple that could have been, because let's be honest, anybody willing to marry George Costanza is a wonderful woman, and so it was a couple that could have been that wasn't, and
That's so good.
rest in peace, Susan Ross, I guess. Anyways, any other TV silver screen romances that you want to?
I think the Cosby's got to be on there.
Yeah.
The Huxtables, I should say. Sorry, not the Cosby's.
Not
Did
The
not age
actual
well.
Mr. Cosby in the real world is a slime bag and should
Right.
be in Slime Ball and should be in Jill Rest's life. But
Cliff Huxtable
yeah, the
is-
Huxtables, like fictional character
those are fun
Huxtables. Yeah.
characters.
And apparently, like one of the reasons why that is so historic is I don't think at the time we had not seen many like black marriages depicted on TV.
Mm-hmm.
The Jeffersons, I guess.
I was gonna say the
more-
Jeffersons, yeah.
But for a lot of people, I just have heard this from people that it was like really meaningful and like representation to a lot of like black families that that something like a positive, which is positive on TV starring role, prime time black marriage. So that's I think that's some side points for the history of that.
a good
I
answer.
loved so Sister just got added to Netflix, I think it was, and I with Tia and Tamara
Oh yeah,
Mowry,
I was like,
and I love that show. And they're one of them lives with her dad and one lives with her mom. Like they're twins that discover that they're twins. So it's not like their parents are married, but the parents end up together in the show, and that's just like a really fun they move in together like for the sake of the girls, and like I'm not advocating for that, but I'm just saying it was a weird TV situation. They were twins separated at birth, okay?
Parent trap.
Yeah, but yes, like a parent trap, and so that was kind of like a cool, I just like love that show, so that was fun.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I do wish. I mean, Luke and Lorelai did wind up together in Gilmore Girls,
It was
but
a long journey.
yeah, that was. I don't know. I would have liked to have seen them together sooner.
Yeah,
Where
agreed.
do we stand on Uncle Jesse and Aunt Becky from Full House?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were.
And she stepped up and filled a mother role for
Yeah.
the girls.
Yeah,
and
that's
I want
true.
to throw them up there.
Yeah,
I was gonna
they
say
were good.
That's fair.
evenly matched. I
Evenly
think,
matched.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
I
good.
would be a
Yep.
fan of that.
Yeah, I just want to throw them in there. A little Full House, a little TGIF.
There we go. All right. Well, we will move into the
Kelly and Zach forever.
maybe hopefully more important stuff, and talk about marriage in the context of real life. And maybe if you guys, as the married couple on the podcast, Chrissy, why don't you give? Actually, there's a question I want to ask first. Dean said last week that there's no doubt that on your all's first date, that if nothing else, you would have left saying he's confident in himself. Is this true?
100%.
Yeah.
I remember when
Stud.
people would ask me about him, I'm like, he's like a larger than life character. And he
my
just
gosh.
had, no, I
Was that the angle you were going for last
No, that
week?
was not the
Because
angle
this is
you were
making
going
all
for.
my dreams come true.
Oh my gosh.
Show her you're the man without telling her you're the
Let's
man.
go. Larger than life character. Let's go.
man.
Like Gronk? I mean, what are we talking about here?
No. No, but you just had like fun stories. You knew who you were and you knew what you wanted, and you were fun. You still are fun, but it was very fun.
And I didn't even know my Enneagram number then.
He
Imagine
did
that.
not. He did not.
All right, so
Whenever someone asks me about Enneagram, I never can remember. So I always text Ashlyn. She gets a text like once every 2 months. What is my Enneagram number?
It's true.
what is it? Just for
7-wing-8.
okay, there you go. For any of
I
you
don't
who
know what
care.
that means, but I believe her.
All right, so now that we know that Dean was extremely confident and a larger-than-life character, Chrissy, can you just share with folks how long you guys have been married, and then maybe what your like dating and early marriage kind of story is?
Yeah, we have been married for 17 years this past December. And we met on an actual blind date before Facebook, before really, I mean, our cell phones, we could there was no texting, so he could call me. But my friend in Lynchburg, where he went to school, told him about me, and she gave him my email address, and he emailed me, and the email was like, hey, this is Jamie's friend, Dean. I understand if this is weird, you don't have to email me back, but I'd really like to get to know you. And I was like, wow, okay, sure, I'll give it a try. So
See, I advocated last week for email as an appropriate form of contact.
Yes,
I mean,
there you go.
Yeah, she was always, her friend would just mention it to me casually, like, because she knows I was from Tallahassee, and her friend Chrissy went to FSU. So she would tell her fiance, like, hey, who's on my dorm, wouldn't he like Chrissy? Like, it was just kind of like a thing. Like, just kind of stuck in her head that we needed to meet. And then, like, she always was on me about it. And then she mentioned it to her, basically to make sure it was okay that I emailed her. So I didn't really know what to say. So I just, like, threw out that 2 little liner.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. And then we dated long distance. My dad worked for Delta, so I would fly up to see him all the time. And his family lived in Tallahassee. So over the summers, I think we had one summer here before we were engaged. And then the rest is history.
You know, you'd fly up to D.C. a lot. My uncle and aunt live in D.C., and it was like 3 hours or so from Lynchburg, something like that. And I would drive up and pick you up at the Reagan Airport, and then we'd like kind of hang out in D.C. all day, and then we'd go stay at my Uncle Richard and Aunt Sue's. They have this, they had like 5 or 6 bedrooms. You had your own little room there, and it was great.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
Every person in a long distance relationship hates you guys right now.
Yes,
Oh, I
I
know.
know.
That's like the best perk to
I
have
told him
ever.
we cheated. I don't think we went more than 2 or 3 weeks without seeing each other.
Yeah, in those early days, Sue and Rich probably knew you more than my parents did.
Yeah.
Before, like, I came up for the summer and all that. Like, I mean, they obviously, you lived with them for a while,
Right,
while I was
right.
in D.C. working. But like, yeah, so that was having that house to go to was
Oh,
nice.
it was
So we
awesome.
were in college. Yeah.
That's awesome. So we had put out on the Instagram story for the podcast yesterday, just if there was any topics or things that people wanted to kind of hear you all talk about. And so one of the first things we're going to ask is, and this came from somebody who will leave everybody's names out of the questions, but they said, who's putting IKEA furniture together in the Inserra household, Dean or Chrissy?
100% me.
Oh my gosh, I have a life goal. First of all, never walk in IKEA. That's one of my personal goals. But oh yeah, I mean, she has her own toolbox.
I do.
Like I don't
all the tools are
even
mine.
anything remotely handy is her.
And I will say, Sally Ashlyn, our little one, is starting to take an interest. Like when I put together her bed, I put together her trundle bed. Let's talk about that. But when I put together her bed, she helped me, and she was very interested. It was fun.
So are dudes that have like no handy skills whatsoever, is that like a turnoff at all, Ashlyn? Is that like a,
Why are you asking
I don't know.
me?
Like if you're
Well,
dating,
he's not asking me.
if you're dating, if you're dating,
Yeah,
if you're like dating a dude and he like is as like incompetent as I am with all those kind of things, are you like, oh
No,
gosh?
that doesn't bother me. I mean, what would bother me more is like if there was like there's no help to even figure out what to do. Like if I'm like, oh, it's okay, I got this, I can put this together.
Yeah.
Like that's totally fine. I don't think it's so much like who is doing it, but like if it was something where it was like, you know, like I'm not going to like install an oven by myself. So I would want the person to be like, well, at the very least, we're going to figure out who to hire to do this.
Oh yeah.
But no, that wouldn't bother me. Like, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'd carry it in the box.
Yeah.
And I would call someone to come over and help.
There you go.
Yeah. So
Provide support.
one thing I told Chrissy early on, like I think when we first got married, it was like, just so you know, no matter what our financial situation is, no matter where we are in life, we will always have a lawn man. Like we won't have insurance before we'll have a lawn man. Like just so you know, and we've always had a lawn man.
We have a lawn man.
Yeah.
I think it would almost be worse for the person who like thinks they're handy or really wants to be handy and like must be handy about everything.
Oh yeah.
That's worse than like, hey, look, this isn't my thing, but like we're still gonna figure out how to make it happen.
That's an insecure dude usually.
Yeah, you have to be able to admit defeat. Like, you know, you can try and fix your dryer, but if you've broken your glasses in the process, it's time to just call somebody. I may be speaking from experience.
Yeah, I have zero like shame or like insecurities about my lack of like candy skills. It's just a thing. I'll call someone to come help. My wife can do most of it anyways, and yeah.
And I appreciate that more than you trying and breaking your glasses in the process and then being like, oh, well.
Yeah, you'll never see me like try to knock out a wall for fun
Nope.
or things that people do. Or, like, yeah, that's that.
So to sort of take that point and expand it farther a little bit, you know, obviously all of us around this table hold what I'll just, you know, call complementarian views of women and men being, you know, equal in dignity and value and worth, but having distinct roles. And so how do things that are cultural, like let's just say, you know, typically men being, you know, kind of Mr. Fix-It, you know, or I don't know, I know, you know, there are men who cook a lot of the meals in the home, which would oftentimes in terms of like cultural stereotypes would be a more, you know, female thing. How can you hold, you know, complementarian views while at the same time realizing that there are certain, you know, maybe cultural stereotypes within relationships and marriage that don't really matter as much as they seem? Like how do you kind of manage or think through those tensions?
I mean, I look at our house and I think that, you know, some of the roles that we have are pretty stereotypical, but others are not. But when we think about our complementarian views, I mean, you are leading our home, you are providing for our family, and I mean,
And I don't know how to cook.
and you don't know how to cook, and that is just fine.
So it's more of a survival thing than a roles thing in our house.
Right. But you do so many other things. And I mean, if you were to ask our children, you know, who runs our house? Yeah, mom is balancing the checkbook and is running the inside of the house, but dad is running things. I mean, you're in charge of the direction that our family is going.
Yeah, I feel like one of my responsibilities is kind of to set the tone and the
Yes.
culture of our home.
100%.
That doesn't mean Chrissy's not fully involved in that and doesn't have a voice in that and speak in that. So we want to define complementarian roles more by more than like American ideas of family, you know, and functioning. We want to look at it more in our house more by kind of culture and that type and responsibility for those kind of things. That's sort of what, like at the end of the day, like that I think that I'm responsible for my family. That doesn't mean Chrissy doesn't have responsibility for her family. She has tons, but like if the family's not in a good place, if like the buck stops with me when it comes to that. And notice by that, I'm not saying that I'm in charge. I'm not saying that, you know, that my opinion wins the day, or I'm just saying that like I'm responsible for the culture of my family. So I think that's kind of what it looks like for us in the, yeah. And, you know, and we've always been whatever it is to like, you're not working right now. You're substitute teaching days you want to, which is nice. But you work for a long time. And I always told you, like, if that's not something you want to do and want to be home, we'll figure it out. You know, and actually, like you stayed home when we were making the least amount of income we'd ever made before, right? But because at that time in the seasons of the kid's life, that's what you want to do. And then because we, you know, did not have much income, you taught piano lessons to do whatever. So you were providing too for doing that. And that was very helpful for us. But it's always been kind of like, you know, I don't think that complementarianism means like you have to stay home or that, you have like, I don't think that even for a second. So I've always said, hey, look, you decide what you want to do. If you want to work full time, great. If you want to not work at all, great. Like, we'll figure it out. And in this time of our family's life, she thought it would be best for her to, because we're going 100 miles an hour with 3 different kids in 3 completely different life phases. That's what's interesting about our family is they're all so far apart. So you have 3 completely different worlds operating at the same time. So like our kids will never be on the same sports teams. Will never be in the same, like youth ministry at the same time. Well, down the road they will, but like it's just all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's more of a culture thing for us than a here's your thing, here's my thing kind of thing for us.
And the way I look at it, I mean, if you look even back to the very beginning at Adam and Eve, Eve was created to be a helper for Adam. And so when I was debating on whether or not I wanted to keep working or stay home, I enjoyed my job, but I was like, I kept coming to the same conclusion that I would be more of a help to Dean and to our family if I step back from this role and if I'm home. And so I've kind of seen that as always been my role. How can I best help you to move our family in the direction that it needs to go? How can I come alongside you and support that?
And what's funny is you're probably busier right now than you've ever been in your life.
100%.
in terms of in terms of ministry, relationships, all the things you're doing that don't get, that don't show up on,
right.
On Instagram or whatever, they don't get paid for. It's been cool to see actually. Yeah. So yeah,
that's awesome. That was really helpful. One of the other questions that was asked is, and I think this is something that I've heard from people or heard questions about, and I know just from knowing you guys where kind of how you all fall on this, but what would you say is the role of spiritual disciplines kind of in your marriage? And, I think sometimes people feel a lot of pressure to like, oh, I have to do a Bible study with my spouse, or, we need to do X, Y, and Z together. How do you all think about that? Maybe like in terms of your actual relationship, how does that play out? And then maybe what are some broader kind of, ways to help people think about how they engage in spiritual disciplines with their family and spouse?
Yeah, we have just never really been the family devotionals family. I mean, I mean,
we have seasons where we'll go through things as a family.
Yeah, I mean, and we're just going. If we go so just different directions during the day, that if we ever we would never have our own personal devotions done at that. So we just have our own different paces, our own different rhythms, our own different, I guess you could say, walks with God individually, which I think is really important. So we're just not the couple that does couples devotionals together. I'm just not really wired that way. I don't know if that's bad. I don't know if I'm a bad husband or a bad Christian for that. I'm not really sure. But I just, people had great marriages.
Put it out there and Twitter will tell you.
Yeah, seriously. But people had great Christian marriages before there were the books about devotionals, but I take an interest in what she's doing. So I'm just always interested on she leads Bible studies and things like that. So I'm always I got Judges coming up to preach on the Sunday that this podcast comes out. So she's done Judges forever. I mean, Christy's been leading a Judges Bible study. So I'm gonna be asking her what do I need to talk about? Where do I need to go? That kind of stuff. Now I know it's sermon related, but just that kind of stuff more than anything else. So
I remember the other night as I'm falling asleep, you're like, tell me 3 things about Judges. I'm like, it was bad. It was very bad.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff. And I know families I encourage Tommy to read his Bible. He's 14. I encourage him to. That's kind of where I'm at with him. And he likes to. So that kind of stuff. Tommy's really into Christian rap. I can't stand that stuff, but I'm thankful for it because there's such sound lyrics out there and good stuff. It's just not my style of music. I just don't like it. But so that's really, so I ask him about that, and when he wants to tell me about what he's listening to, that's cool, and for me to hear him talk about that and things like that. So we're just really.
And as far as spiritual disciplines, one of the things that they help you do is they help you to, overcome your selfishness and draw you closer to God. They're for you. They're not for God. But in marriage, I think it's so important to have those daily or regular practices, because I always tell people who are single, you won't realize how selfish you are until you get married. And then you'll think you realize how selfish you are. And then you'll have kids and you'll be like, oh my gosh. But I love my children. I love being married, but it's a spotlight on your selfishness. And so I think spiritual disciplines, just various disciplines, is a way to be combating that regularly. So I'm going to be a better wife to Dean if I am constantly or regularly being aware of my myself spiritually, and I'm praying, and I'm reading my Bible and things like that.
I wanted to add something because I think this is something that I think a lot of single Christians can be can anticipate or like almost like be afraid of, because you're like, how am I going to know that like my spouse is spiritual enough, and I just, even especially talking to some of our college women and younger women who are thinking about, how should I even think about spiritual disciplines like as I look towards marriage. And one of the most godly people ever told me one time that, and I think I mentioned this actually in the last podcast, but that one of the best ways to follow Jesus with your spouse or in a relationship is to create that both people are creating space for the other person to commune with God or to follow Jesus. And
Totally.
and I think that could even tie back to like what, as you guys, I'm listening to you guys talk about, roles in your home, that if one person or the other in your home, let's say, is so loaded down with work or caring for the family or whatever, that like there's no room for just time with the Lord. That might be a way that you can come alongside, your spouse to say, hey, let me take some of this off your plate so that you can actually like be refreshed in the Lord to serve our family well, or whatever. So, and that just has always stuck with me. And I hear a lot of single Christians talking about, almost kind of like you want the scorecard, like spiritual disciplines can almost become like a safety to like, reassure you that this person, which kind of going back to your point, Chrissy, it also is very self-centered, because it's like, well, we also need to look at ourselves and say like, how am I growing in the Lord? But that's something that has always stuck out to me as, how can in a relationship or, as you're looking towards marriage, like how will you go into this with the intention to encourage that person in their walk with the Lord and create space so that they're able to grow and flourish, as opposed to like, did you check off your spiritual discipline scorecard this week? So.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, and if you're a couple that like, I know couples that like their thing is their devotionals. I think that's great. Mm-hmm. I think every couple just has their own rhythm of what it means to look like to follow Jesus in their home. And so I think one of the most important things we're doing right now is really trying to cultivate a love for the church in our family. Yes, I'm a pastor, but that's even more the reason why, for our kids to be able to do that. So like, our kids see church as like a very positive place, a place where they want to be, a place where, I let them kind of do whatever they want here. Not like in a cross the line way, probably tie sometimes, but like I let them kind of roam around and like just love. I just want them to.
They know where all the hidden candy.
Yeah,
is.
and I'm like that with all staff kids. Like so staff kids, I sneak them candy and I let them run around. I just think that's a good thing. But more than just that, the kids to see like the church is like a place where, like a life-giving place. It's like it's what people who follow the Lord do and are a part of. So I want to ask them. The one thing we definitely talk about regularly is what they talked about at church on Sunday. Where they were in City Church Kids. Things like that. Those are important rhythms. Because I want the church to be such an integral part of their life when they're out of our house. So we're trying to cultivate that right now for them. So we're not really the catechism family. I think that's wonderful. Mm-hmm. We're there might be seasons where we do more of that, but we're more of a, like, we love the church. We're a part of it. We're trying to follow Jesus. We're thankful for the gospel.
And we talk about issues as they come up
definitely.
in their lives,
always.
About school and what's your friend doing and what, we're going to talk about that.
We're having gender conversations.
Yep. Yeah.
And
it's our word of the week.
Yeah, it is our word of the week. We have a word of the week every week, our family. And it's like a calendar on the wall, and it says, what's the word of the week this week? It's gender. So we want our boys to know that, and our boys and girls to know that God has a design. Here's why it matters. So... Yeah, so that's I would call us, and I explained this one time, I would call us kind of an as-you-go family. More than like a regiment,
right.
Like scheduled family. We just can't. I mean, like, it's just not how our family works. I guess we could, but it would just probably make me go crazy. But and you're not wired that way either.
No,
yeah, so I think we're like we kind of disciple as we go.
Yeah.
Conversations, car rides on the way to school.
But it is very intentional. It has
absolutely.
to be intentional. If it's not intentional, it won't happen.
Totally. I mean, just little things like playing Christian radio, driving around town, and all of a sudden, like our 6-year-old is singing these songs. Just little things like that. That would just.
Well, and the opposite happens if we don't play it. Our 6-year-old will say, "Well, what do these words mean in this song?" And I'm like, that's fine. I'm sorry."
Yeah, wasn't it Tommy who sang "Rain makes corn,
Yes.
corn makes whiskey"?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was like 2.
Yeah.
We're like, all right, song.
So let's put on Wally in the morning.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit, so you guys, Dean, a lot of this has to do with the fact that you're a pastor and the pastor of our church, but you see marriages in I would say almost every phase, right? So you see people as they're engaged and they're excited about marriage and blissfully unaware of their selfishness and all that comes with marriage. You see people who are in the midst of crisis, and that may be in a couple months or many years into marriage, and then you see people who have walked faithfully with their spouses for many, many years. I think the goal for all of us as we get married, like no one goes into marriage thinking, a divorce 10 years in is the goal. Like that's just, everybody thinks about the cute old couple that's 50 years into marriage and just, in love with each other and whatever. All those, kind of just stereotypical, like we want to, run the race well.
Can it not be the people that sit and don't talk to each other at dinner? Because that makes me sad.
It does.
Oh, that
They
sounds
get
terrible.
out two books.
Yeah.
I guess
Yes.
that's not that much
Go
of
to
the
dinner
two
at
phones,
5
but
and then
yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh.
like, I realize that probably they're like, I've lived my whole life with you. Like, I have nothing more to say. Like, I'm just going to enjoy your company.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm like, it's so sad.
We spent our entire day together. This is our quiet time over
Right.
whatever we're eating at the Village Inn.
Oh yeah, no, I see couples like both sit down, both got the newspaper.
Yeah.
Just up and just hold
The
up.
narrative in my head is that there are problems going on there.
Yeah, so not that, but so I think the kind of the two other stages that we see, people who are excited about marriage, and then people who may be in a rough patch or in crisis. What on the front end, I guess I'll ask the first question is, what advice would you give to that engaged married couple that you just think is like critical advice for the phase that they're in?
Yeah, and for a church our size and the other responsibilities I have just in terms of preaching and leading and those kind of things, I'm pretty involved in marriage life, like in terms of counseling and things kind of under the radar, mostly from people that I know in town. Like it's kind of, I think, part of being a hometown pastor is that people like trust me, people don't go to our church. I mean, these people usually are unchurched or like marginally churched here sometimes. So I'm pretty invested in this stuff. I would say you have to go in. I really think you have to go into your marriage believing that divorce is not an option. Like there's no like, hey, if it doesn't work out, or prenups, or that's critical. And then for the couple that already is married, I think it's the same thing. It's that we have a lot of options. Divorce isn't one of them. And then because of that, then if it's going to be forever, then you put the work in to make sure it's not terrible. It's not something you want to get out of. And so that's, again, I'm not talking about abuse situations or adultery situations and things like that, but like that's not the reason I see most people go through divorces. Usually it's just because like somebody's not happy, or they're just
falling out of love.
Yeah, not like it used to be. Now
apart.
those lead to affairs, but the root is usually things like that. Like we just are just different people now, or we just that kind of. It really is usually what it is for me, what I see. So it's just like that, even though you are gonna be different people. I hope you're different people when you're 40 than you are when you were 22. But this really is forever, and I think that's what God designed. That was what Jesus said marriage was, and I think we have to go in with that understanding. Yeah,
I would agree totally with that. Yeah, you have to know that's. I think if that underlies everything else that you talk about from here on out, it has to be in the context of this is permanent. And therefore, we're going to do our finances this way, and we're going to, run our family this way.
and usually marriage is only bad or hard if someone's being difficult. I mean, it's a you thing, like your spouse or you. I mean, like somebody's being difficult. Maybe you just decide you're not going to be a punk. And I mean, seriously, sometimes it really is that easy. Like you're not going to be some selfish jerk. Like you're not going to treat somebody at work better than you treat your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not going to give more grace to, your buddy than you are your spouse. I mean, like that kind of stuff, is we're told to love our neighbors. We're told to love our wife as Christ loved the church. So they're different levels of love, right? It's not the same love, the kind of idea.
So it's sort of along those lines. I think it's in The Meaning of Marriage, and which is a book by Tim and Kathy Keller, and they talk about that. I think there's some statistic that they say you marry 7 people because you like your spouse changes 7 times or something over the course of marriage, and we're talking about kind of putting in the work to make it not stink. So how can people who are married, who are different at 40 than they were at 25, make sure that they are kind of growing together. Obviously, we talked about growing in the Lord. I think that's a key component of that. Like we have to make sure we're continuing to walk with the Lord and spend time in scriptures. But then, like at the end of the day, you're sitting next to somebody or across from somebody, and you can either open the newspaper or you can engage with them. And so, what are some things that maybe you all have done in your relationship or you've seen modeled?
Well, I think that's really true. I mean, the Keller idea. I mean, I married a girl who had turned 22 a month before, and now you're a mom
Not
of
22.
now you're a mom of 3 who owns a house and is married to a pastor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot different than being in seminary with just us in a little apartment, and it's a different universe, right? It's just
Chrissy, we're
Working
interested in the
sales and
7
catering.
Ds.
Yes, I know. Which dean am I on right now?
okay. I like to
Bonus
actually hear.
episode
I like to hear.
coming.
I like to hear some of that, and you married like a guy just turned 23 that kind of had a dream, right? I mean,
Right.
like just sort of like wanted. It's different,
Yeah.
So, and I think the way it happens is I'm a simple guy, I'm gonna give simple answers. I mean, like I think you just have to grow together. Like there's not even a formula for that. I think if you really believe that you're in this together, again, this is forever. That like you just kind of almost like evolve, but not like in the weird use of evolve. Like you have just evolved together, and the changes you make, you almost don't even notice. Because it's like us, it's not just me changing, you changing. It's like us, and then as the life milestones happen, I just look at, I would say the same for like, I think of Alex and Ashley and you both individually, when I first met you guys, you were in this part of your life, and now you're a different person than you were. I think Ashlyn was like 23 when I met you, 22 or something like that. And Alex, you were in college.
19,
you were probably in college 20.
I'm not 3 years older than Alex.
Yeah,
Let the
I
record
met you all at the
show.
same time.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
I
It's
think
like 20 days.
you were still church hopping in
Give
when I
me
met
my
you.
3 years back. Yeah, I was. That's
So I
true.
met Alex
I'm just
first.
saying I was 19.
So Ashlyn was 19 and a day.
Oh yeah, that's true because he met you before me. Sorry.
Yes.
That's what
I
I
didn't mean
meant.
to make that a whole thing. I was so offended by that.
I
Wow.
know. I met her
Oh,
first.
I'm anxious
And
about
you
my
brought me a
age.
Starbucks without a straw and a sippy cup. All right, sorry. So, but yeah, I think it's us. Like it's us like growing together. Like that's how like so. But I think you'd be really aware of about that reality of you're going to be a different person. Guess what? Your kids are different at 14 than they were at 10, and we're at 6, and we're
Yeah, and I think part of that, and this is kind of basic, but find things you both like to do together. And if you can only find one thing you like to do together, then do that one thing. Or if there's something your spouse likes to do, like, now he's going to make me cash in on this. Dean likes sport. Like, he loves sports, and he wants to go to all the games, every game of everything. And I enjoy that. And so, I'll go. He's giving me a funny look now. I will go, and we'll go to some baseball games. And I enjoy doing that kind of thing with him. He's like, why can't we go to all of spring training?
So you're
which
not
is
the
fun.
woman crocheting at the baseball game.
No, I go and I enjoy it. And I don't really have like a hobby that I make you go to with me.
praise the Lord.
Do I? I don't think I do. I tried to get him to watch The Crown with me the other night, and he was like,
Yeah, I don't do
Give
those.
it a
No.
chance.
Yeah.
I know.
No.
Anyway, but just to
Your
That's what
hobbies
friends
are
are
like
for.
your hobbies are like friends
Yeah.
and walking and reading and
yeah,
going out with the girls and watching your British shows and all that kind of stuff.
I like that stuff.
Yeah. Do you like Tom Brady?
He's really good.
That's all I need.
Now
He's
I do
very good.
sort of on that
all I
note.
need.
How does one navigate a family portrait with Gronk in the living room?
Framed in the living
Oh
room.
my gosh.
Keep winning Super Bowls. That's
Our
how.
children are not in it. It's just Dean and me and Gronk.
Yep. And it's my picture on like my video chat thing apps. It's the,
Yeah,
it's,
we
it's
see.
the picture. Yeah.
We
Yeah,
see
that's Chrissy.
frequently.
That's Chrissy not being selfish.
It's me. I am, yes.
Gronk. Now, if we can get the Tom Brady cutout in the living
Nope.
room, that'd be huge.
Nope. Tom
There.
Brady spent a couple months in our living room a couple years ago, and he wound up being taken out in the rain to your office, and now I don't know where he is.
He's still in the office.
I
removed him.
pull up, and my kids are walking in carrying Tom Brady into the church office. I help a trade by
In the
by my own
rain.
boys.
I gave you a wave, and I'm like, he's all done. No more. Sissy. My selflessness has a limit. So, but yeah.
If selfishness is the root, probably of almost every marriage problem,
No doubt.
how can we daily combat selfishness in marriage?
Ooh, it's the story of the Christian life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think in the same. Yeah. So I think you have to be aware. So we all people married for 50 years, single, 7 years old, widowed to divorced to married for golden anniversary. Everybody deals with selfishness every single day. So in marriage, my selfishness directly affects my spouse, right? It's gonna reflect my kids. Even outside of that, if I'm being selfish at church, it's gonna negatively impact. When I say reflect, I meant to say impact, not reflect. It's gonna impact my coworkers, right? It's gonna impact, I think we have to be aware of how selfishness is not just about. Granted, this sounds like it's how selfishness should be. So it's self, right? That selfishness doesn't just make us the people we're not supposed to be by the grace of God. God's grace made us different than that. But it also stretches far and wide. So it's going to be maybe little gun shells to some people, but for people closest to you, it's going to be like a torpedo hitting them, right? So it's over and over again. So I think we have to the discipline of dying to yourself every day. I think that's just part of the Christian story, right? And I just don't think it's that much different in marriage than it is in single life in terms of the battle. It's a real thing. Selfishness drives everything, right? So we walk in the Spirit, we'll carry out the desires of the flesh. Galatians 5, right? I think that part of the Christian story and discipleship has to include that, or we're never going to be the followers of Christ. That the marriage is going to magnify it. Because it can't be, because you have to, I'm responsible for other people 24/7. So it's going to magnify my selfishness.
You have to just keep it in mind. And I think there's so much prayer as I'm praying on my own, as I'm praying for Dean. A lot of my praying for Dean involves God help me to, I think I say it over and over every day, help me to not be selfish here. I am really selfish right here. Help me to fix this. And it's just realizing that and exercising full and utter dependence on God and knowing that there's going to be, you're going to mess up a lot, and just having grace for each other, as we're both growing in that area, having grace for each other. And I think we're good about that, but knowing that it's going to be how it is until we die.
Philippians 2, that Jesus did not consider equality with God as something to be grasped, but he humbled himself, right, into the form of a servant. And same Jesus, love your wife as Christ loved the church, right? That's that's what it's about, right? But then we see in the scriptures also about a friend who will lay down his life for another, right? It's the best kind of friend, right? We're told. That's the battle of discipleship. I think is selfishness versus God, versus a Godward life. That's love God, love people.
I think in the scriptures, when we see selfishness, and this absolutely, we see this play out in real life, how much that flows into self-deception. And when I talk to, my friends who are married, the ones who I have seen, that I have been encouraged and edified by, seeing them just fight selfishness in their marriages, is when they're able, when they're talking about, just sharing an issue or just something on their heart that has to do with their marriage. When they're able to be completely honest about, their own sin and their own selfishness, and they're not deceived by thinking, I'm just entitled or I'm justified to feel this way. When that kind of posture is there, usually from what I have seen, it kind of lends itself more towards bitterness, and you just kind of see the hurt and the, whatever sinful thoughts or feelings are there. Hurt's not sinful, but you know what I'm saying? The selfishness kind of take deeper root and just start to manifest in more frustrations in their marriage. But when I've seen friends who can say, yeah, this is a difficult time that I'm going through, or this was a way that I was hurt by my spouse or whatever, not in a gossiping way, but just in a, sharing what's on their heart as a Christian. But then they're able to kind of honestly assess it and say, I can see the places where I feel like I should, I deserve, an apology. I deserve, this, whatever, but they're able to sort of set that aside and then sort of to speak and think through things with grace. I'm just always really, really encouraged by people who can talk honestly and openly about something that's going on, but also approach it, very, very aware that they and their spouse are sinners who are in need of grace. And so that's just when I think about, and we look at the scriptures, it's anytime that we are really, truly wrapped up in selfishness, it always leads us in some ways to like wanting to deceive ourselves that we're not, you know, and that's just such a slippery slope. So anyways, I'm encouraged when I talk to my married friends who seem to be able to navigate that well. And I think that seems important. So
Sort of on that idea, what does it look like to extend grace to your spouse when they've failed in the context of marriage? Not necessarily, I mean, maybe that may be little things on a day-to-day basis, or, adultery. Like what, I mean, I know that's sort of a very large spectrum. It's not just the same answer for those, but as you think about, I mean, we are all going to fail, in this side of heaven. And so hopefully those failures are not, things that cost you your marriage or, but how do you extend grace in little things, if it's, or big things, to your spouse?
I mean, I think it begins with meaning that you're not holding your spouse to a higher standard than you are holding others to. And by higher standard, I mean of forgiveness, and of grace. Obviously, I have a different responsibility set to my wife than I do to other people. So the standards are different.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of just the forgiveness side of things, right? There's not an exception clause. Like everybody gets grace but my wife. Everybody gets grace but, and I think it's a gospel issue. Like you really are, like, you're acting that out, and that's a visible portrait of that. Also, part of grace means that you're willing to, you are willing to be understanding on the flip side. If you're the one receiving grace, that you're willing to do the work of brokenness, because grace doesn't mean everything goes away.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean there still aren't, hurts and consequences and effects of your sin. So you're showing grace back by not being defensive and doing whatever it takes to rebuild what's been lost for anything. Just basic trust, or, I'm not talking about adultery. It could be that, but just basic trust, you're willing to do those things. So I think it's kind of like an attitude of that. So I think we oftentimes just put grace in the hands of the person who's been offended, but sometimes the offender, needs to realize what grace looks like for them is to respond to the grace they're being shown by basically saying, what do I need to do? I'm not going to have my own figurative defense attorney, for my life. Instead, I'm going to take the whips and, I'm going to get beat up, and if I have to for a little while, because because you're forgiven. Grace is the fact that you haven't been kicked out the door, right? That you're not on I-10 hitchhiking, right? I mean, so now what do I need to do to respond to that grace? I think it's kind of a lost art in the conversation, but to show grace, I mean, it's the ultimate story of the gospel, right? No one's done to us what we haven't done to God. How many times have we committed spiritual adultery? How many times have we done that? Daily.
Mm-hmm.
That's a battle, right? I mean, how many times have we lied to God? How many times have we, not trusted? How many times have we are just on and on. So yeah,
and
there's
if
more
you
grace.
can keep that in mind, that helps so much when you can feel it beginning to bubble over of, oh, they've done this thing over and over, or, oh my goodness, this thing is too big for me to forgive. And if you can kind of flip that around of well, how often have I wronged the creator of the universe, and he has forgiven me freely? I have no room to not show this grace here.
Yeah, and what the results of the grace are is different based on the situation. You can show grace and show forgiveness, and there be not the result you wanted, that you received. So there's not one way that takes place, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, that's good. For folks who maybe are in a rough spot, or struggling with something in the context of their marriage, what would be your advice? What are some practical things they can do to, if that's having a couple come alongside, reaching out to, what are some things that they can do to say, what we see, this isn't going the way we wish it would, but we value, we're committed to each other and we want to get help. What are some things they can do?
I mean, I think you look in the mirror first. What are the me problems here? You really have to be self-aware. Scripture, 2 Corinthians 13, I think it is, says, examine yourselves to see if you're in the faith. Yeah, I think you examine yourselves. I think that's part of it. And then be willing to listen. And also, don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, help might not mean professional counseling yet. It might mean just a trusted friend that you can talk to. And then hopefully that trusted friend can go, okay, I think this is at a level where just you and I can talk about this for a while. But also have the instincts to go, hey, you might need counseling for this. You might need to go see a pro for this. I refer people all the time. There's sometimes I know a marriage mentor couple could totally handle it because they just have communication issues and they're, that kind of stuff. And just things that they're just being ridiculous about, that somebody, just a good friend can, smack them around in love a little bit. just give them some pointers and just be in their lives. But for other couples, it's like, hey, how serious are we going to take marriage? Like sometimes we'd go to counseling, but we can't afford it. It's like, well, you went to a Florida State football game, you went out to dinner, you went to the movies, you bought that outfit. It's like how like investing literally, in your marriage if you need to. Like, how important is it to you to be able to do that? Like, it's always discouraging when someone says, I can't afford counseling. It's like, well, counseling's expensive. I fully understand that.
But it's worth it.
But what else in your life can you afford, quote unquote, that you're doing? Like, yeah.
And I think a lot of times, and this is just from our viewpoint, when we see a couple who has maybe they're having a rough patch, if you ask them, well, are you involved in church? And a lot of times they're like, well, we haven't been in 6-8 months. I'm not saying that not going to church is the reason for a rough patch in your marriage, but it does allow things. It keeps you out of communion with other believers, and it might allow things to creep up unchecked. And so when you are purposely putting yourselves in communion with other believers, either in a church or in a small group, or just allowing people into your lives, those things are going to have to be addressed, and they might not creep up as much. And then you're in a safe place to be able to address them, because these people are for you and they're for your marriage. And so I would say the importance of that for sure.
Yeah. Whatever it takes. Yeah. And church should be a basic for Christian couples. If you claim Christ and the local church is not a part of your marriage, there's a huge disconnect that's happening.
It's good. Any other final thoughts on marriage before we transition to the local?
I know Holly Tucker, who's one of my favorite people, but Holly Tucker asked that question about IKEA. So Holly would like you to know that I have zero shame in that. And, and I will not help you if anything breaks in your house, because I wouldn't be able to help. So I will send Chrissy over. She'd want to come over anyway. So
I will happily
stay strong, Luke Tucker. Don't fix things either.
There you go. Well, as we transition to the local on tap and keeping on theme with weddings and marriage, what is your favorite wedding venue in Tallahassee?
I love the tree by that lake at Bradley's. Like Bradley's Pond. I just think that's really pretty. I haven't been to a wedding there in a while, and it's just a really pretty setting. Is it a tree? I think there's a tree. There's a lot of trees, but Bradley's Pond.
There are a lot of trees, yes.
I am probably where our youth minister Zach and Jamie got married at Southwood Plantation. I love that spot. I think so. Brandon and Virginia Gaskins, who are members of our church, got married there too, I think. Just a great spot. I love that. You know what else I really like? I've only done a couple here, but our weddings in that officiated, and that is McClay Gardens. Like over by like where the actual gardens are, like by the little reflection ponds where you can see the lake in the background. That's neat. I loved it. I feel like I'm just like enjoying the scenery, like just hanging out, officiating. Like I can see it because I'm looking out to it from where I'm sitting or where I'm standing at the wedding. Everybody's in their chairs, their backs are towards them. I can see the lake, see the flower. I love that place.
Yeah, Southwood was going to be my answer. I feel like as I think about this, I'm like, Tallahassee, if you're not like a southern plantation kind of person, like you might be limited.
Well, you're not the wedding town for you.
Right.
Although there is the new the 4 Points by Sheraton opened a new venue. I think it's called like Bricks and Brass.
Oh,
and it looks very nice.
Interesting.
You can do it.
Thanks, Alex.
If you're not a plantation person, there's your option.
Yeah. So Southwood would probably. I mean, I was at Zach and Jamie's wedding and have been to several others there that were really beautiful. So
Shiloh Farm is nice too. I think that's the name of it.
Yeah,
out
that is nice.
off the east side of town, and we've had some staff members who got married there, and
you know what else?
Quite nice.
You know what's a good one is Trinity United Methodist downtown.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
gosh,
Taylor and Leah
beautiful.
Langston got married there. Did their wedding there.
It's a beautiful church.
Hopefully, the Methodist Church will still believe in marriage, but they're struggling with that right now. But that was just a beautiful. That place is awesome. I walked in there and was like, whoa, that's a really
gorgeous.
neat sanctuary for a wedding. If you want that like traditional, like really kind of formal wedding feel with a long aisle and the stained glass, it's a really neat wedding place for an inside non-plantation wedding. Unless you want to go to the Sheraton Inn lobby or whatever Alex recommended.
No, it wasn't the lobby. It's a venue space.
Continental breakfast for the reception.
It's connected. It's not in the hotel. It's just their space. Saw a commercial for it recently. Sorry. I was excited. Anywho.
Do they take a credit card for incidentals when you walk in, or how does it work? Sorry.
I don't know. No, I'm already married, and I'm not looking to have another reception. So, Well, we thank you guys for joining us for another episode of The Local Dive. Hope this was helpful, and we'll see you next week.
Shout out to Pat Scott, Alex's mom.
Thanks for listening to The Local Dive, a podcast diving into deep and shallow musings about Christ, the church, and culture. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow The Local Dive on social media and continue the conversation with us on Instagram and Twitter at The Local Dive Pod.